Okay, James, welcome to Closer Conversations. You recently released an album, if one can call it that. Yeah, I guess one can. It's on YouTube called Music is Not Always Participatory. And on the final track of that album, there's a piece called The Future of Classical Music. So I thought it would be appropriate to discuss the future of classical music with you. Let's start with the title, because that seems like it's very much something to do with our time.
Mm-hmm. It's actually not to do with our time or even our culture. It's from an interview with... I don't actually remember which country it is. I think it's the director of the Ghana National Orchestra, that Jens Peter Muller, composer, showed me this interview, and he's trying to explain classical music to the people in Ghana, and he's giving an interview about it, and he's trying to convince the people in Ghana to stop dancing. Because there's this orchestra and they're playing Mozart and they're playing everything, and the people just want to get up and get involved in the performance all the time, and he's saying to them, no, don't do that. Music is not always participatory. It's sometimes okay to just sit back and listen. And I'm not sure if that's actually the ethos or philosophy of the album, but I do like that title because it's got a little bit of a how do I put it? Like a barb in it, like a stinger. That's a little aggressive, and it's also a mission statement. I'm not sure it's my mission statement, but
yeah, I mean, it may have grown out of something else, but it does speak to our time, because there has been, especially as we've been forced into Zoom meetings and all of this, and concerts have been challenged. Having places to meet has become very difficult. People have been scrambling to find ways of being inclusive and to encourage participation. So the philosophy and ethos of the album. What would you describe the philosophy and ethos of the album as?
I mean, anything I say now, I wasn't thinking about when I was doing it. So this is all looking back. But if I could tease out some common threads at the time that I was making this album, there was a lot of why not floating around. A lot of stuff that had been in my head for a while that had been I couldn't find the right venue for it or outlet for it. A lot of things that I wanted to use and a lot of pieces that I never got around to doing. It's also just about being very excessive and doing the most, doing too much quite a lot of the time, and letting go of things sounding. I mean, I'm not really ever concerned with things sounding nice, but specifically in this album, letting go of it even sounding good. Because there's a lot, and then
there was something with your Posey performance last year at Climb Festival on the ship, where you also spoke about, before the performance, you spoke about sort of you've gone through this whole conservatory education and had all the training and everything, and then needing to kind of destroy that a little bit and loosen it up. And that's definitely a feeling that one gets with this album. I mean, a lot of it is it's very much still a composed album, because you have this contrast between the noisy bits and then the very gentle, tender bits, and you've got this sort of big climax at the end with the noisy anti-fleur piece, and then the Schubert coda. So it's totally composed, but I mean, it's kind of in your face. A lot of the noise, and that struck me also as being something. It's not like a dark metal noise or anything like this. It's just it's just noise.
Yeah.
Kind of like our time. It's like just
there's so much all the time
Yeah.
to like pay attention to, and like you have to, like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too current events, but like the news is just horrible, but like you have to kind of stay a little bit connected to what's going on. So I'm trying to, I don't know, maybe it's like a sensory overload thing, because there's just too much to like digest all the time. Like, and you wake up and there's just some horrible event happening. Like, great, what do I do with this information? Write an album, apparently. Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, it struck me also as being like, in some ways, an extension of your performances, because there are a lot of the elements that are similar, but in the performances, they were very participatory. You were really working directly with people, with large groups of people, and almost like a choreographer more than a composer, even though there was a lot of composed, very structured material as well. And then with this album, it seems like a lot of the impulses were somewhat the same, but given that you couldn't work with groups of people anymore, that you found this other way of...
Well, there's still 2 collaborations on the album.
Yeah.
And that was an area, those 2 were an area where I just completely left it up to them. So I just got, there's Barra Gisladottir and Conor McLean, and I just told both of them, just record something and send it to me. And then we talked, and Barra just sang into her phone for 7 minutes and sent me 3 recordings on Facebook Messenger, and Conor covered a country music singer on his vintage tape recorder and sent that to me. So it's still participatory.
Yeah.
It's not always participatory, but I'm still managed. I think I'm happy with, like, in isolation, working with other people still happened in a way. Obviously not on the same scale as the performances, but it's not possible right now.
Yeah, given the means that were available. And then it opens with a psalm, which I guess says something about your background. And I remember an interview with you a few years ago from Pulsar, where you were talking about your sort of fascination with rituals.
Yeah.
So there's something that's still hanging around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess it was kind of my like early musical training is like the Catholic Church, because I went to Catholic Mass every Sunday. I say every day. No, every Sunday until I was 15 or 16. I guess 16. And I was playing these hymns and psalms on saxophone and clarinet. One, like the one that opens the album, definitely played that one quite a lot. And just like doing them again and again and again. And I don't know if you know much about the history of the Catholic Church in the UK, but it's really weird. Like there's like all the churches got like stolen or like transferred in power when Henry VIII made the Church of England. So like a lot of the churches now in the UK Catholic churches in the UK are actually modern buildings. So there's and in cities there'll normally be like a Church of England cathedral and a Catholic cathedral, and quite a lot of the time the Catholic cathedral will be some like concrete monstrosity from the 70s. But it's like the more old-fashioned church. I love that. So there's this weird like clash of modern and ancient, and then the music is really interesting because when not the Reformation, I don't know, my grasp is shaky. I did study this at university, but a lot of Catholic music, all this like florid William Byrd and Tallis and stuff, was like suppressed by the monarchy at the time. So the choral tradition is kind of a Church of England thing with these big like Vaughan Williams style psalms, but then we still did that in the Catholic Church. But then a lot of the like new composed music that was specifically Catholic, again, ended up this kind of like weird New Age meditation stuff that I don't know existed in the Church of England music, because they've got paradoxically like a longer history. So it's really like all this clash of like trash and spirituality and like kind of like semi-pop music. I love that. Well, I don't love that, but it's where I come from. And then doing these hymns again and again and again, and then getting like progressively angrier because I was also coming to terms with my identity as a gay person and having to be in the Catholic Church every Sunday, and it was never like discussed being gay like, but it was like clearly there in the atmosphere. So like I'm, you know, an angry queer kid playing his hymns for all the old people. I tried to quit so many times, but my dad was very insistent because he was the church had a congregation of about 35. My dad was the organist and he hated that equally. So we would do alternate Sundays. I would play saxophone with some guy on guitar and my dad would play the organ and we both hated it and wanted to quit. So every time I tried to quit, my dad was like, no, you just have to do it for the old people. They love it. But I think that he knew that if I quit, then he would have to do it all the time. So,
yeah. That's quite a story.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that is definitely found an outlet in your debut concert, and now it's now you've kind of also moved on a little bit, but still there as a little ghost from the past. If we jump to the end of the album, the future of classical music.
Yeah.
What is the future of classical music?
I don't know. I mean, that's why I wrote a track called "The Future of Classical Music" because I mean, and the future of classical music on that album is the past.
Yeah.
But it's also very much like
a sort of broken past.
Yeah, and they're very much like an imperfect present because it's like I can't like that Schubert piece is very like special to me, and I love that. That's one of my favorite pieces of music. And it's something that I play anytime I get my hands on a piano. Just like automatically, my hands just fall there. So I was like, oh, why don't I just do that at the end? Like. Because, you know, you reach the end of the album. Not that I composed it, like, chronologically, but, like, I reached the end and I was like, whoa. Yeah. And then it's like, I always like to finish a piece with a song. This is, like, a recurring theme with me. So this is that for that album. Yeah. So I just decided I will sit down, I will play this piece. Any mistakes on this really out-of-tune piano as well. Sorry. Any mistakes will just be in the album. So that's just like a one take. Yeah. Like, yeah. I was in the common studio at the time and my regret is that nobody walked in while I was doing that because I would have loved to have just like, oh, hi, how are you doing? But I had to stick with my one and done philosophy. Yeah.
It's good. How does all that, I mean, we've got this Catholic Church pop influences, Schubert, but because you also have an identity as a sort of composer of new contemporary classical music. And that's maybe not that present on the album.
No.
And where, like, how do you see all that fitting into?
I think that's a question that's going to occupy me for the next maybe rest of my life, maybe 10 years. But that's okay. That's an interesting question, I think. And then it's all about this process of like removing the conservatory from my mind. Yeah. I mean, a lot of stuff on the album is very much systematically composed quite a lot of the time. Even though it might not sound it, there's number systems everywhere going through it. There's only, even though it sounds like just pure noise music, the only one on the album that's completely just improvised is that anti-fleur noise track at the end, and even then uses like a loop, like a tiny loop pedal, so like it's got an inbuilt structure to it. Yeah.
Do you have a connection to Ortica and to the whole bands like that? The English IDM sort of electronic music scene.
I've got no idea what you're talking about, so no.
Okay, Aphex Twin.
Aphex Twin, no, and it's the name I know about.
All those things.
I guess.
I was thinking about it a little bit when I heard some, with all the drum beats layered on top of each other. And of course they really go for it in a very intricate way, and this is more things thrown in a more haphazard way, thrown on top of each other. But it's interesting to hear that there are systems behind it. Yeah,
absolutely. Not so much because I'm using a lot of the Infinity series most of the time in everything I do, and that's less present on the album, I think. But in terms of structuring a piece, absolutely, it's all like there's charts. It's all systematically number worked out. Yeah, especially on the track with Connor, this Angels music, where it just sounds like a fucking mess. But it's like I literally sat down. Okay, I've got 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and just chopped that up into little bits of time, and then came up with 4 or 5 different materials and just layered them on top of each other in varying different ways. So that was one where, like, it's incredibly structured. there's very little freedom, except with like within the choice of material, and even that was basically just like one thing for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How do you normally start a piece? Is it?
It sounds really lame, but thinking like normally, like if I'll start a piece, then it's normally, sometimes it revolves around like one event, and then trying to make like that event make sense in the context, like what can lead up to this event, what happens after the event, like trying to unpick that. Sometimes it's I honestly don't know the answer to that question. Like I'll plan a lot. I like to write text, write all the text down. I like to do some I guess research, but it's normally, if you can call Wikipedia research, I guess you can. Yeah, varying different ways.
And in this case, you had sort of a whole series of individual pieces, but also the kind of concept of the album of doing. Did that come first? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, the album is born out of kind of like boredom and like I said, this why not attitude. Like, fuck it. I had no idea where it was going to go. I had no idea how I was going to release it. If I was going to release it, I just knew that it was important to do something, and not even maybe a little bit as a response to Corona, but it wasn't like, because obviously I had pieces to write, and then they all got moved until about. I'm currently in the middle of finishing those pieces. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you decided to put it out on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting choice. I think it was just because I'm trying to like take any pressure off myself at all, like in terms of like interacting with structures and systems and like what I expect myself to do. So like I had this thought about like, this is going to be the least stressful experience ever, this album. I'm not going to do anything that like, of course writing the music was like hard and like I went somewhere, but like in terms of like the stuff around it, I was like, I'll just keep it easy. Like, so I just uploaded it to YouTube, just like boom. And then Coda and YouTube got in this fight. So I was like, great, I now can't access my own album. I mean, obviously I had it on my computer. I was like, okay, well, maybe I should think about other alternatives. And then I realized that the Capo and Edition S are in the same building.
Yeah.
So I just thought, well, that makes sense. Like, I have a contact there. Like, yeah.
Yeah. How do you think it's going to fit into the rest of the Capo's catalog?
I couldn't possibly say. That's not for me to decide.
Yeah.
I'm glad they took it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of a nice contrast.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's Schubert on it.
Yeah. Why not something like Bandcamp?
Simply due to the fact that I never used it before.
Okay.
That's it. I don't have any kind of ideological.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, I've used YouTube a lot. I've never used the Capo either, but I thought, well, why not? Swing big.
Yeah.
Woo.
Okay. Let's jump to something completely different. I was speaking with Neko about Lullabies and the fact that there was a performance just over a year apart. Recently, they just performed it last week. And the differences between the two performances and how they experienced, performing for, given the different audience constraints. And what was your experience of the two?
Yeah, I mean, they were really different. And not just due to like Corona stuff, because, I mean, there were different audience profiles for a start. So the last year it was done at Klang Festival, so that was coming with an inbuilt contemporary music crowd, and this was not so much that, I think, because it was also the Lou and her partner Anders who commissioned the piece. They made a documentary film of their time in Vietnam collecting the material, so it was also the premiere of that. So there was people there that were just there to see the film. But yeah, it was interesting. I don't like. There was one. I mean, in the last part of the piece, you're supposed to go to the basement and drink tea together and sing together, and this became very formal now. Whereas before, it had the. I was more satisfied with it last year because it had kind of the intended effect of like, oh, okay, this is a contemporary music festival, and now you have to get, it's participatory. You have to get involved, and it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall, because like this doesn't really happen at contemporary music concerts where the audience has to get involved. Maybe more and more nowadays, but like it's to such like a certain extent, and especially after like 35 minutes of new music. Whereas this time, we couldn't serve tea, and that was a big part of it for me, and that's also from Catholic upbringing, because my family would do the sometimes my family would do the we call it coffee morning, like the after church, church hall chat with the old ladies. So we would like do that and serve tea to people and coffee, and Lou had a similar experience from her childhood, so it was a no-brainer. Obviously we couldn't serve the tea, so that was out, and then because of like distance and safety measures, social distancing. Last time it was this nice thing where everyone was kind of like crammed together, and there was a really nice sense of community. Whereas this time everyone had to like sit 2 meters apart with the tape and the thing, and it was a lot more formal, which made like and in that movement, like I'm performing as well. I was playing clarinet, which I can't do very well, and the Neko were playing instruments that they can't play very well either. So that, it took on a different edge when like the audience was so formal compared to when it was more community focused. So yeah, it was different.
Okay, that's also an interesting background to understand what that grew out of.
Yeah.
And the pieces that you're working on now for Klang Festival?
Not for Klang. I don't have anything for Klang this year. I was going to do something with Oriol Perez's debut concert, but I think that will be next year instead. But I've just finished the piece for this festival called Arts Incubator in Korea, which is Posey again is making a return. So I've been filming with Posey a lot in these last few weeks, and editing the video for that together. And then there's a performance element with piano and percussion. And then before that, I finished a piece for trombone and bass clarinet for Christian Schilling-Larsen and Jason Alder, which will be in Aarhus on the 18th of October and Copenhagen on the 19th of October. And that I need to go back to after I've got one more thing to do for this Korean piece, and then I need to go back to the other piece to finish off the video part.
Has the Corona spring that we have behind us now changed the way you're working?
I definitely learned a lot from doing the album, that's for sure. It's like both like technically in terms of like work, like knowing my way better around Reaper and Ableton Live. Like I'm just better at that now. Whereas before it was touch and go. Like now it's just maybe just touch. I'm still bad at it, but I know my way a bit more around, and so that's changed my relation to like using other media more. Like I'm better at video editing. I'm better at audio manipulation and yada yada. And I've never really considered myself to be like an electroacoustic composer at all.
Yeah.
At all. And then I released an album that's like mostly electronic music. So yeah, in that practical sense, and then maybe in an artistic sense, I think it's too soon to say, but I'd guess yes. In terms of just this process that I talked about like de-academizing my brain, I feel like it helped a lot to really like show myself why that was necessary. Not that the academy is a bad thing, and not that I didn't learn a lot from the academy, but in terms of like there's also so many other things I can do, and that requires some kind of letting go of older habits and preferences.
I guess the album was also a big step away from notation.
Yeah, that's true. Obviously I was still sketching a lot and writing down. I think there was only one thing in the whole album where I actually wrote down musical notation, and then that's also kind of what makes that Schubert at the end even funnier, because that is pure notation. I had the score in front of me. Yeah.
And now working with Jason Alder and doing pieces like that again, I guess that is notation.
That is notation, but I mean, even that's a 3-movement piece, and only the middle movement is like notes.
Yeah.
And the first one is spoken text, and the last movement is choreography, which I spent ages trying to figure out how to notate, because I've done choreography. The thing in the debut concert.
Yeah, there was a lot of
that was notated choreography. This is more, it's like a Word document. A Word document and a lot of instructional videos. Yeah. We'll see how it turns out. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll be there, so I can tell them if they're doing it wrong.
Great. Cool, James. Thanks a lot for having a chat with us.